makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
A week can't go by without me making a Jimmy Dore video, so here goes. Back in June, there was a major row between Jimmy Dore and the Young Turks. Now, they'd been going at it for a while before this, but it really went nuclear the moment that Anna Kasparian's revelations of sexual harassment were made public, which, I should add, Jimmy Dore pretty much confirmed on his own show, which goes to show you the degree of sleazeball that we're dealing with here. Anyway, caught in the crossfires of this row was Kyle Kulinski, which he wasn't really involved in it, but got dragged in, I guess, because people wanted to know what his opinions on the matter were. So he made a video, which I think was quite gracious to both sides. Certainly way more gracious to Jimmy Dore than I think he deserved. And it was obviously a situation that I guess was quite uncomfortable for him. A situation akin to seeing your two best friends hate each other and you feeling the need to tell them both some hard truths, but at the same time keeping them as friends. So let's watch a bit of this video, and then let's watch Jimmy Dore's reaction, which wasn't immediate. In fact, it took a number of months before he revealed what he actually thought of Kyle's behavior in this video. So let's watch it. Oh, the immediate context to this video is, I guess, the accusation that Jimmy Dore has not been aligned with the left, that is the Jimmy Dore left, which I should add, Kyle Kulinski and Jimmy Dore pretty much have the exact same stance on major issues. The difference between the two is obviously the degree of vulgarity in which Jimmy Dore conducts his punditry versus the, I would say, much more sane way in which Kyle does his. So let's watch this bit.
Now, that's not even the only time I brought it up. I brought it up 3 or 4 times. I've done literally over 100 segments on Syria. Now, granted, most of those, I mean, almost all of them are about the Civil War, but, you know, since we got the OPCW whistleblower and Aaron did that great work,
Aaron Mate does not do great work. All he does is shill for tyrants.
Almost every segment on Syria, I've brought up that fact. So, I mean, I don't know what you want me to tell you. I'm doing policy shit exactly right, yet I'm still somehow getting these weird passive-aggressive criticisms. So here's the bottom line, guys. Everybody needs to stop dragging me into some bullshit. This has absolutely nothing to do with me. If they want to keep duking it out, they can keep duking it out. I don't buy this notion that, well, everything they're doing is talking about policy. Nonsense, because if that was the case, well, guess what? I've done 103 segments on Syria, 82 on Russia, 16 on Russia Gate. I debated Cenk on Russia Gate. I did 217 segments on Medicare for All, and maybe about a dozen referencing directly or indirectly Force the Vote, and I was a supporter of Force the Vote. So everybody knows where I stand on all the policy stuff. Yet I'm being dragged into this. And I don't want to be dragged into this, because it has gotten ugly, and it has gotten personal. And the final point I want to make is this. Here's where everybody's wrong, okay? TYT accuses Jimmy of being a grifter and a right-winger. They're wrong on both of those things. It doesn't matter what you think of Jimmy, personally or otherwise. He's not a grifter. He believes every word he's saying.
Okay, so for starters, that is not the definition of grifter. And also, we can't really get into people's minds to know whether what they're saying is true. So you can't categorically, you might claim to know someone, but you can't really get into their head and prove that they are actually acting in good faith. The way that we determine whether someone is a grifter is basically by looking at how their political positions or personal positions conveniently fall in line with the actions that would seem to be getting you a bigger audience, which would lead one to suggest that those positions are being deliberately made with the intention of gaining an audience. And I think that's exactly what Jimmy Dore does. And for proof, I want to show you a video that was recently revealed. It's not recent, though. It's from when Jimmy Dore was still a part of the Young Turks. And this is what Jimmy Dore has to say about working with Fox News.
You wouldn't forgive me for going to work for the KKK, but why do we forgive
would not.
people for going to work for Fox News? Because that is the most that is like not okay. That is so over the top, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's no disqualification from polite society anymore. Hey, and I think we should shame people who need to make money from racist organizations like Fox News.
And we're happy to have him in our studio now. Jimmy Dore, thanks so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. You know, I just like to tell people who get upset at me for when I do your show, it's like, well, you shouldn't be upset that I'm doing Tucker's show. You should be thankful that Tucker brings me on to bring my anti-war message and my free speech and defense of Julian Assange to half the country.
You wouldn't forgive me for
See, that is how we know that he's a grifter. Okay, it's not by whether he believes everything he says. It is because his positions, his actions, align with those that one would take if all one was interested in was gaining an audience. And especially in his case, gaining a right-wing audience, which if you look at the similarities between Jimmy Dore fanboys and basically your run-of-the-mill kind of modern alt-light or alt-right supporter, they are almost indistinguishable in many respects. Whenever you have a discussion or debate with a Jimmy Dore fanboy on Twitter, do your due diligence and check their Twitter profile. It's crazy, the similarities. You will see, the same vitriolic anti-wokeness, which borders on racism. You will see the same anti-vax attitudes or vaccine skepticism, or just general anti-lockdown sentiment. So there's so many points in common. I would love to know the psychology of the average Jimmy Dore supporter, because we have tons of research on the psychology of, far right people, far right authoritarians. It's known as the right wing authoritarian personality. If I had a degree in social psychology or just psychology in general, I would be doing papers right now on Jimmy Dore's fans, because it is interesting, because they seem to be exactly the same in terms of general cultural attitudes. It just seems like someone from the alt-right who realizes that they need Medicare for all. Like, that's basically the only difference. And who claim to be anti-war because really what they're doing is covering from anti-democratic tyrants, because secretly that's exactly what they would want to be, or what they would want to establish at home. So it is worrying, but that is the evidence of the grift.
Guaranteed. I know Jimmy. That's a fact. He believes every single word he's saying. The idea he's a right-winger is also ludicrous. He's attacking Democrats from the left. He's attacking the left flank of the Democrats from the left. Now, you might not like that. You might think some of his attacks are unfair. You might think some of his attacks are misleading or whatever. We're not.
Well, yes, a lot of these attacks are blatant lies. I made a video of him showing Max Blumenthal on his show, where Max Blumenthal essentially lies about some tweets that AOC made. I made a video on this. So it's not the fact that he attacks only the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, which is not true. I mean, he does, to his credit, he does criticize centrists a lot. What he doesn't criticize a lot is right-wingers, unless it's, some kind of anything related to security state issues. But he never criticizes Trump, for example, rarely. Now, again, you don't have to make that the focus of your show, but it's the way, it's the attitude that he takes towards progressives, towards people like AOC, and the fact that he lies about these things. He did not cover at all, the eviction moratorium protests, at all. In fact, I'm showing you. Here is Jimmy Dore's video stream. He doesn't have a single video on the eviction moratorium protest. Why? Because Cori Bush was leading it. It was something that the squad that he hates so much, the #fraud squad that he hates so much, was leading, and that was actually successful. And this is ironic because he did speak about the evictions, but he just didn't cover the protest. All he did was cover, again, Max Blumenthal harassing Cori Bush on Force to Vote. That's what he did cover. So that's why I think he is dishonest. And this is not to say that people like AOC or the Squad don't deserve criticism for their lack of action in some respects. I agree. No politician should be free of criticism. I just made a video criticizing Bernie Sanders, despite the fact that I think Bernie Sanders is probably my favorite US politician in recent memory. So it's lying about it. It's the angle that you take that matters. It's not the fact that you do it. And I think that's what's really disingenuous. And again, that is what I think is supremely generous on the part of Kyle Kulinski in the way that he's describing this.
I'm not going to get into that now. I got 1,000 criticisms and 1,000 points of agreement, but he ain't a right winger and he ain't a grifter. Okay.
Again, he's not a right winger, but he pretty much has created a fan base that is largely sympathetic to the far right. So, and it's all part of this ecosystem that, the so-called red-brown alliance that makes you want to think that people from the populist left and people from the populist right want the same things just because they agree on a few issues. And that is so false. And that is so damaging. And I see this not just among the Jimmy Dores, because they take it to a different level, but you do see it from other pundits, like Crystal Ball. Because in Rising and Breaking Points, having someone like Sagar Enjeti on your show and agreeing with him on 90% of things will make anyone think that the left and the right agree on 90% of things, which is not the case. So just be aware of that.
At the same time, Jimmy accuses TYT of being basically corrupt and being liars. I disagree. You know who else used to disagree? This guy.
Actually, I was wondering about Cenk because, I saw Cenk at the E-Board meeting and I asked him some tough questions about how he's taking money from Jeffrey Katzenberg. He got a $20 million investment to hire some journalists. And so far, I haven't seen a lot of them, doing the original investigative reporting that they're supposed to be doing. I see a lot of punditry. And unfortunately, on the main show, it tends to be kind of mainstream. Does he think that this money that he's taken from the establishment Democratic Party would influence him? And of course, he says it hasn't. But now we see, this reporting about Russia. So I know that you may not want, you have to choose your words very carefully, but
I don't think that's, I don't think Cenk is preaching a false narrative for investment money. I think he truly believes it. I take it, Cenk is what I call a natural Republican, right? So he was a Republican at first for a long time, and he talks about this openly, about how he even led pro-Iraq war rallies, right? The first one. And so that's why people are drawn to him, because it's this great journey where he went from this, meathead, into this progressive, right? And so that's what appealed to me about his journey and about Cenk. So I think, if he is what we consider to be wrong on an issue, it's just because he's genuinely, believes it. That money, that investment money, that's not how Cenk works.
That is so funny, because every single criticism that Jimmy Dore gives to the Young Turks these days includes the part of, the Katzenberg funded Young Turks. He does that with every single organization that he dislikes. He will point out what their funding is in order to smear them. So he also always refers to the Intercept as, the billionaire funded Intercept. One has to wonder where he got the money for his $1.9 million LA home. But, his side can never be accused of those things. Any single allegation similar to that is a McCarthy smear, according to him. But it is so funny to see this and say that he doesn't think that it influenced them, and then literally your entire show these days is complaining about how every other progressive channel is somehow funded by billionaire donors or Katzenberg. So enough on this. So what happened later? I didn't get a sense that there was like an immediate backlash against Kyle Kulinski, but I guess he was just waiting for the moment. And that moment came on August 1st in this video called Biden Worse for the Environment Than Trump, where he suddenly goes on a rant against Kyle out of the blue, just completely randomly. And this is really strange. I haven't seen any other channel cover this, despite the fact that, let's be honest, the online left loves drama and loves gossip. But let's see what he said about Kyle Kulinski in this clip.
Representative Jayapal says President Biden has risen to the moment. Yeah, for his donors. How do people take this kind of lying? So I would say to Kyle Kulinski, doesn't when she lies like this, isn't that burning a bridge with us? Isn't that when they don't do a goddamn thing that they said they would? Isn't that burning a bridge with us? What is your mechanism to hold them accountable? When she's obviously just pissing in your face right now, because that's what this is. And you're just like, oh, it's good. She's my friend. I like you. Come on my show. I like you. We're good people. We won't be mean to you. I certainly won't raise my voice like Jimmy Dore. She says President Biden has...
That's funny because he didn't also raise his voice against Tulsi Gabbard when he had her on his show. In fact, he never really grilled her on Medicare for All, despite the fact that she was completely flip-flopping on her healthcare agenda. That's really funny why he didn't do it. Just gave a fawning interview with softball questions. I think all these people in the sort of Jimmy Dore orbit, this dumb left ecosystem, has some weird psychosexual attraction to Tulsi Gabbard. But anyway.
Risen to the moment. Like a true Justice Democrat. Isn't she? Like a true Justice Democrat. But I really do give him an A in what he's done so far. It's been bold. It's been progressive. It's been what the country needs. Tell that to the millions of people about to get kicked out of their house tomorrow. Tell that to the millions of people living under fucking bridges. Tell that to the 100,000 people who died from COVID because they didn't have Medicare for all. Because 100,000 people would have been saved if there was Medicare for all. So this is a liar.
So he's really complaining not so much about Medicare for all because he conveniently forgot to mention that Jayapal is actually the sponsor of the House Medicare for All bill, which has, guess how many co-sponsors? You might think from listening to Jimmy Dore that Medicare for All is only supported and sort of loosely by the squad. The Medicare for All bill in the House of Representatives has 117 co-sponsors. That's over half of all Democrats in the House. That's how many it has. So what he's really criticizing her is that she didn't support forced vote. That's why he criticizes the whole squad for, not for their position in general in favor of universal health care. It's merely because they did not accept this one tactic that was doomed to fail. Because even if it passed, even if the floor vote had taken place, it would not have passed. Americans still would not have had Medicare for all. So, yeah, that is his dishonesty in not telling you the whole picture.
This is someone who's a liar, who's a gaslighter, and who is not fighting for you. And this is someone who we should make afraid. This is someone who every YouTube host should say, stop voting for her and stop giving her money, and then see how she handles it.
So Jimmy Dore's strategy since 2016 is this idea that you shouldn't vote for the Democratic Party in any way, because that's the only way that they'll learn their lesson. Because clearly they learned it. I mean, this was the crux of his debates with Sam Seder, which have been proven completely wrong. You know, the Democratic Party is not, did not have like a radical shift towards being a progressive left party at all. It's moving towards the left very slowly, very gradually. But he thought that this was going to be some kind of revolution. I swear to God, if I had, when he says things like we should not vote for Democrats, and I should add that his partner, Stefan Samarano, I think her name is. She appears on her show. She's a producer. She went on Twitter right before the election in Ohio, the special election where Nina Turner was running. And she basically said that she was like never voting Democratic Party and never voting Republican either, and not donating to any of them. I swear to God, if I thought that the GOP was was competent at political strategy, because I don't think they are. I think they're really good at kind of cultural strategy of using the culture war as a proxy for politics. They don't even bother arguing policy anymore. They just care about the culture war. As Andrew Breitbart said, politics is downstream from culture, and they know this. They're good at that. But I don't think they're particularly good at political strategy. I swear to God, if I thought the Republicans were good at political strategy, I would think, oh my God, Jimmy Dore is like their best operative. It's, their best sleeper cell. Because this is how you kind of contribute to destroying the left from within, from what Jimmy Dore is doing. Create a bunch of like really nihilistic misfits on Twitter who believe all the shit that you say, because you basically have this totalizing ideology that you install on your followers, and say things like this, like, don't ever vote for Democrats. And who benefits from this? Republicans. And then he can go and say that whenever Democrats lose, it's because they didn't do what he said.
That's how you hold people accountable. You don't hold them accountable by being nice to them. And if you think that, you're the chump of all chumps and cucks of all cucks, and now I get it. I get it why you weren't at those marches last Saturday giving a speech. I get it.
You basically went to one of those marches, or it gave your 3-minute speech, then immediately disappeared because you had something more important to do, which was prepare for your Joe Rogan appearance.
Because you're a nutless coward, and you're protecting people like this. And until you tell your viewers to stop voting for them and to stop donating to them, you're part of the problem. You are now bolstering the establishment. There's no doubt about it. And if you say we have to be nice to them, you're bolstering the establishment and you're hurting the movement. What the movement needs now is to put the fear of God in these motherfuckers. And when YouTube hosts coddle them and protect them, that's deleterious to the movement that you're supposed to give a shit about. Have some fucking balls. Stop pretending you don't know how politics works. And fight for something. Actually fight for something. Ruffle some feathers, you fucking nutless wonder. Fight for something. But you won't. That's why I'm doing it. That's why those people were doing it on Monday at AOC's office.
He wasn't there. That's hilarious. He's like, I'm fighting for something. And then he wasn't there. Why wasn't he there? Because he was at Joe Rogan's show, which gives him much greater visibility than a couple dozen people outside AOC's office in the Bronx. And what were you doing on Joe Rogan's show? Oh yeah, discussing your vaccine side effects and how the government is stifling the use of ivermectin. That's what you were doing on the Joe Rogan show. And yet somehow you're not a grifter.
That's why those people were out there last Saturday. And that's why you weren't. Because you're nutless and you'll never fight for shit. There's another person who grew up in a corporate lawyer family.
Okay, I'm not going to go and review all of Jimmy Dore's attacks on every single leftist who isn't in his orbit. But there you go. That's what you get for doing a gracious video, a generous video of the Jimmy Dore versus PYT conflict. You get called a nutless wonder, a nutless coward. This is why Jimmy Dore, this is why his followers have this completely binary view of the world. This kind of Bush-like, you're with us or against us. There's no shades of gray in Jimmy Dore's universe. And that is the mentality of a cult. That is not sane. That is not how we should engage in politics. Because there are never, ever, ever pure good guys in politics. And usually, sometimes even a lot of those supposed villains might not be as villainous as someone like Jimmy Dore is describing them. Because you would go on Jimmy Dore's show and think that AOC is like personally responsible for every bad thing that happens in the US. That's kind of the impression that you get. And like I said, it's convenient for him. It's easy. It's intellectually lazy. And to be honest, his followers aren't very intelligent. But it's, this is what you get when you don't align 100% with someone like Jimmy Dore. This is what happens to someone like Kyle, despite the fact that Kyle is on policies pretty much in the same orbit as Jimmy Dore. But that was not enough. You had to be with him 100% in this row, or else you get called a nutless wonder later on. And yeah, it's I think it's unfair. I don't agree with Kyle Kulinski on a lot of issues. I think ideologically I'm much more to the left of him in terms of economics, for example. I don't think he's a socialist. But in terms of doing politics, I am much less radical than he is. Like I don't think forced to vote was the right thing to do. But he seems like a decent guy. Not nearly as sleazy and vulgar as Jimmy Dore is. But still, that is what you get. That is what you get. And I don't think Kyle Kulinski watches this channel, but if he does, I have just one thing to say to you. And that is, you should have seen it coming, dog. Should have seen it coming. Anyway, on that note, please like, please share. More importantly, please subscribe. And stay tuned for more Jimmy Dore antics.